This award is given to honor someone in our community whose work, actions, and values embody the Sisters of Mercy's commitment to serving those experiencing poverty and marginalization. You will hear more about the sisters and their work over almost 200 years to address critical needs around the globe later in our program. But one thing that has always been true of their ministries, they respond to the needs of the communities they serve. The response, for Atlanta, that response has meant building our first hospital, St. Joseph's, in 1888, and then 40 years ago, forming Mercy Care to respond to the needs of those living in the street, experiencing homelessness, HIV, and mental illness. As we gather today, we will recognize our honoree, a man whose work and whose belief and whose commitment to the inherent dignity and human rights of each person has touched so many of you and those that you serve. His actions and his courage are a clear example of how mercy can move through a leader and create a greater good for those most in need. But we also gather in the specific context of this moment too, a time when our community faces significant challenges. Policies, programs, and funding are changing. Many individuals and families are facing unprecedented economic pressure, and many go without basic needs, including access to quality health care. Gathering today in this moment to honor the legacy of the sisters and the work of Senator Warnock, I hope this will be a time of inspiration and strength for each of you. We will reflect together on the courage and commitment of the sisters and their ability to find a way when there was no other way. And we will be reminded that when asked what we need to do, what this community needs, how we should support and love one another, their answer has always been, and so perhaps should ours, to begin with mercy. Let me introduce to you Sister Jane Garrity, our Chief Mission Officer at Mercy Care.
Thank you, Catherine, and let me add my welcome to everyone. It's just so great to see so many of you here. My role is to ask the blessing before we eat, although some people are already eating, and that's just fine. What I thought I would do is offer a little reflection that really goes with our theme today of mercy moving through me. And this little reflection also contains a bit of a confession. Archbishop, I will speak with you later. No, this was years ago. I was at a mass, and the first hymn that they were singing was, "God hears the cry of the poor." This is the confession. It was a time in my life when I was rather skeptical, somewhat doubtful, and I said to myself, does God? I thought about people in Somalia. I thought about people in Sudan. I thought about people on the streets here. Does God? But just at that moment, I looked, and in the front row, there was one of our sisters sitting. Her name was Catherine Newsline. And I understood exactly what it meant that God hears the cry of the poor. Let me tell you a little bit about Sister Catherine. Kitty, we called her. And she lived in South Baltimore, a really poor neighborhood in Baltimore on the way to the airport. She lived there, but she more than lived there. She did all that she could in terms of what people needed, whether it was food, whether it was furniture, whether it was clothing, whether it was transportation. She listened for the need, and she fulfilled it. But you know, that's what she did. I think the important thing was how she did it. Her whole mercy moving through her was standing with, being among, accompanying. Her mercy didn't look down, it looked across. Her mercy looked sideways, inviting everyone in from the margins, and inspired by the belief And this is what was so true of her, the goodness of every single person. She loved each person and had a unique ability to bring them together in a community. So when I looked at Kitty, and I knew her, and I knew all that she was and all that she did, it struck me. That's how God does it, through her. And through many people like her. That's how God hears the cry of the poor. So there are many Kitties all over the country, and right here in Atlanta. I would say there are 250 Kitties at Mercy Care. I was going to say this when the senator was here, but there are even some in Congress. There are Kitties at Gateway, at City of Refuge, at Partners for Home, in town, and so many. There he is. Welcome, Senator.
I had a really difficult time getting here because they kept looking for the young sisters to come. So I'm the youngest that they could find. That actually is the truth. The whole profile of the sisters across the United States, the Sisters of Mercy of the Americas, is changing, just like the world is changing. And so it behooves us all the time to think about what it is that should remain and should continue to be our mission and our ministry. And so when I look at you, I want to say some words about the legacy of the Sisters of Mercy, but not too much, because to me, legacy means that's kind of done and dusted language. That's putting the Sisters of Mercy away with the booklet in the drawer. And while we're older, we're still savvier. So what I really thought about with these remarks was that maybe I could talk about the legacy of the Sisters of Mercy, but how could I talk about the legacy of the Sisters of Mercy without talking about you? Each of you, and I've met some of you. How could I talk about the legacy of the Sisters of Mercy without acknowledging, since 1880 and then 1888, all your predecessors who anonymously have been doing good for so many people, for so many years in so many places. And those of you who have had a public life, like Reverend Pastor Senator Warnock, which makes your life even more difficult when the good that you try to do is in a public context. So today, after all, mercy moves through you. Mercy moves through you, Mercy Care trustees and administrators, the ones nobody ever seems to understand what they're doing at all those meetings. The ones who make and the leadership and the operations of a place like Mercy Care run. I know some people think that being a trustee is just all those lovely luncheons that you get to go to that have a lemon tart or cheesecake at the end with the raspberry sauce. Today we're lucky, we have creme brulee. So there's a motivation for being with Mercy Care. Mercy moves through you, all the direct service providers and the staff members. Mercy moves through you, Mercy Care donors and volunteers and public officials. Mercy moves through each of you, and Mercy has, not just for 40 years, but for very much longer. And Senator, Pastor, Reverend Warnock, Mercy moves through you, and I want to give you a shout out because you were one of the only legislators who met with all of us sisters when we went to Capitol Hill as Sister Speaks. And in the old days, we would have had 3,000 sisters there. And this time we had 300, many in wheelchairs, praying the rosary, praying for our legislators, and you, Pastor, Senator, greeted them, and I believe they asked you to bless them, and they blessed you. That is a certain kind of... It takes a big-hearted person to interrupt a day full of meetings and messages in the hallways where you dwell to come and see a bunch of mostly old ladies who really want to support you in your care and ministry to other people. So thank you. So Mercy's been moving through all your predecessors since about 1880, when the Sisters of Mercy, with far less common sense, but far more help from people like you, opened Atlanta Hospital, then St. Joseph's, and then for the past 40 years, Mercy Care. Thus, it is your mercy, your misericordiando at Decatur Street and at your other 3 sites across Atlanta to the poor and the infirm and the homeless, God's people, that creates the legacy of the Sisters of Mercy. Your work, not so much ours now, is what extends the gospel. Your work extends the charism of mercy that was gifted from our founders, Catherine McCauley, to make us walking sisters. And we used to walk among the poor of 19th century Dublin, and now we walk with you. We walk with you toward the poor, to be among the poor, not away from the poor. I saw this last month when Sister Jane took me to the Decatur Street site and toured your area and your clinic and your pastor community. There I saw people, your people, sitting or sleeping on the sidewalks, waiting for Mercy Care to open. There I saw people walking the streets near your facility. Some of them were talking to each other. Some of them were talking to someone who I didn't see. All different. But what they all had in common is they were waiting for you to offer them your ear, your patience, your expertise, your professionalism, your healing. And that's what you do every day to all comers. The ability of pay does not mean you cannot apply. So, not the legacy of the Sisters of Mercy, it's too self-referential. Rather, I'd like to talk about the future, and I would like to talk about you and your role in our mercy and work. And so we invite you to join the Sisters of Mercy, not in building a legacy, but in building a runway to the future with us. A runway to the future that unites us in what I'm going to call a conspiracy of compassion. Now, I know conspiracy is a dirty word, but if you take the Latin etymology of it, it means con with, spirare, to breathe. To breathe with people who need you. To breathe with, a conspiracy of compassion, breathing with compassion. So it's not sinister, but it's an inclusive belonging with emphasis on heart and mind and soul. So who are those people who might lead our work in a conspiracy of compassion? They are, I think, the people in chaos. The people in chaos. The people awaiting mercy, which a Jesuit friend of mine defines mercy as the willingness to enter into the chaos of others, and I would add, and help. The willingness to enter into the chaos of others and help. That's what mercy is. So what specifically is the chaos for the people of your Atlanta communities today, into which we must enter, I hope, willingly? So might it be the chaos caused in our communities when there is too much competition and too little collaboration and cooperation? Too little truth-telling and trust-giving? Might it be the chaos that cripples family life with too much scarcity while others live in superabundance? Might it be the chaos caused in a government with diatribe, posturing, and self-interest that have seemed to replace temperance, comity, not comedy, discourse, and the public interest? When there's too much I and not enough we, and we, the people? This is just some of the chaos that we need to enter, to offer together the fruits of our conspiracy of compassion in the name of God. The fruits of mercy offered to all takers who stand amid the chaos of the world and who need our help. And this is when mercy moves through you, you mercy care trustees, administrators, partners, when you offer your time and expertise in the ministry of organizational leadership. The ministry of organizational leadership. And this is when mercy moves through you mercy care staff members and direct service providers, because it's a ministry of healing touch caused by the chaos that causes pain and hurt. And this is when mercy moves through you mercy care donors and volunteers, when you are willing to open up your checkbook yet again to come to an engagement like this, to an organization that will never not need your help. And this is when mercy moves through you government and governmental leaders, whose work can be, if you choose, it can be the ministry of influence, and public service. And this is why, Reverend, Pastor, Senator, Mercy Care honors you today. Not because of your title, not because of your education and your degrees, not even because of your marvelous preaching. We honor you because of the way you exercise your pastoral responsibilities and your position in the corridors of the Capitol, on the Senate subways, and in the office buildings. Now there's a place where we enter into the chaos of others, and you have helped. Your work is creating a runway to the future for people whose lives are rife with chaos, people who are fearful and confused. And I'm a policy analyst. My degree is in public policy, but I've never seen public policy change a heart as much as a pastoral response to another person, one by one. So I think your folks who named you, Raphael, Gamaliel of God, Raphael, God's healing, Gamaliel, God's treasure. We thank you for coupling your pastoral leadership with your public service. It's a trick. Somehow you did it. Be careful, you might be on America's Got Talent. And thank you, everyone, honestly. The 1,700 Sisters of Mercy of the Americas, thank you. And we do pray for you. That's sometimes a casual line that goes by. It's like, and I'll pray for you, but we do. And those of us in faith know that that will take us places that will make our work more of a ministry. And for the ministry that you do at Mercy Care, the Sisters of Mercy of the Americas can't thank you enough. And they let me do that because I'm young.
I would like to invite next Corwin Harper, President of Kaiser Permanente of Georgia, and Mary Ellen Garrett, Chair of the St. Joseph's Health System Board.
So Mary Ellen, I was going to do a duet with you today. And then on top of that, I've spoken a lot in public, but when you have a sister and a pastor, Reverend, Senator on this side, I'm extremely nervous right now. And this is my one of my few times I've had a chance to speak in the state of Georgia. I got here in January. And let me just say, on behalf of our chairman and CEO, Mr. Greg Adams, and all the 250,000+ employees of Kaiser Permanente, this is a very special day. And being here as a regional president of the Georgia region brings me back home, because I want to thank Grady because you took care of my grandmother and grandfather at Grady Hospital. Because of the fellow employees of Kaiser Permanente, I thank you for supporting me. More importantly, I thank you for your great service. As Kaiser Permanente is celebrating 40 years in Georgia, just like Mercy Care is celebrating 40 years. So two organizational institutions, both nonprofit, both caring. So to that end, I just want to make a couple of comments about Kaiser and we'll introduce this great human being. So Kaiser Permanente is a nonprofit organization, one of the largest in the country. And we have a mission where Kaiser Permanente exists to provide high-quality, affordable health care to the communities and the members that we serve. Many people have asked me, say, hey, we hear that you're a for-profit company. The answer is we're not. Here in the state of Georgia alone, we have given back over $1.1 billion to the citizens of the state of Georgia over the last 20 years through a variety of things that we do. And the numbers are getting larger on a national level. And we say that not to talk about it in an arrogant way, but a place of humility, just like this man that we want to argue for. The second thing is that I want to connect the dots, because I saw two recipients of this award that have a relationship with me and also with Kaiser Permanente. Dr. Regina Benjamin, she's on the Kaiser Permanente National Board right now, setting policy for the organization. And of course, the great John Lewis, in which when I had a chance to meet with him a few years ago before he passed away, his moment of speaking to me about humanity touched me to create something called 54 for Humanity, in which I walked 54 miles in honor of him, making the walk from Selma to Montgomery. Which then led me to my quote that I use and I start using every day of my life, and that is, I am one human being living in one human race, working to create a humane world. So the question is, how are you going to take care of humanity? And I want us to challenge and think about that. So today, we've already talked about this great man's oratorical and pastoral skills as he's led Ebenezer Baptist Church. Also his leadership on the Senate floor at the national level of influencing policy. And we're saying that we need to come alongside and pray for him and support him, but today we're going to give him his flowers. And as we give him his flowers, he's touted and pushed on issues such as rural health care, lower prescription drug costs, and also expanding access to coverage. And access is not just the door, it's the financing, it's meeting people where they are and being able to provide for them in their time of need, because healthcare right now is hanging in the balance if we don't watch it. As we think about what makes this man such a great candidate for this award, we think about his dignity, his fairness, his interest in the community, but also he walks in his humanity and he cares for it because his character goes before him and what his reputation is even seen. So today, on behalf of Kaiser Permanente, we also want to highlight the comments about his faith. The audacity of his faith, faith that allows us to see beyond division, faith that calls us to serve with humility, and faith that insists we leave no one behind. So we thank you, dear sir, for not leaving anyone behind. And I would say, great is your mercy that I see, but I'm going to hold off. I get to church.
Thank you so much. I appreciate your comments, as does everyone. Sister Sue, I just have to tell you that while you were in the middle of your beautiful words, Senator Warnock leaned over to me and said, she's preaching a good sermon. You are preaching a good sermon, both of you. Thank you so much. Thank you all for joining us today for Mercy Moves Through Me Luncheon. It is my honor to introduce the recipient, Senator Warnock. But I have to tell you how I met him first. Probably 10, 12 years ago, we were sitting at a gala. It was a Catholic Charities gala. My husband was chairing at the time. We were seated. I had Reverend Pastor Warnock to my left. I had Archbishop Gregory to my right. And I was in the middle of one of the most beautiful conversations, but I felt like I was at a tennis match because I was doing this all evening long. And the conversation went toward the two universal things to talk about, God and food. And so we talked about food a lot. I said, I make some killer lamb chops, and I would love to have you over my house for lamb chops. So Pastor Warnock and his sister Wendetta came over to my house for lamb chops. We have been friends ever since, so ask someone over to your house for dinner. You never know who you're going to meet. It is my pleasure to introduce to you my friend, Pastor Senator Warnock, Raphael Warnock, who is this year's recipient of the Mercy Moves through Me Award with Mercy Care.
I'd love to say she had me at hello, but the truth is she had me at lamb chop. Hello, everybody. Hello. Thank you so very much for this honor. I am so deeply moved to be here with you in this American moment with so much on the line. It's good to be with good people who understand and embody what the gospel is all about. Archbishop Hartmeyer, thank you so very much for your service. Give the Archbishop a great big round of applause. You are a very fine leader and cleric, but I have to tell you, one of the finest sermons I've heard in recent days was delivered by Sue Sanders this morning. Thank you so very much. To my dear friend Mary Ellen Garrett and her husband Scott, they're good friends for quite some time now. And to the people of Ebenezer Baptist Church, they snuck up on me. I didn't know they'd be here. These are my fellow. So when you think about the fact that I've got this running train between the church and the Senate, sometimes in my pulpit, sometimes on the Senate floor, it doesn't matter the location, it's still going to be a sermon. I often say that I am not a senator who used to be a pastor. I'm a pastor who serves in the Senate. I was a little late today because I was eulogizing one of my parishioners. And that work of walking with the people is what inspires my life as a public servant. That's what it means to be a pastor. Is to walk with the people. And I did promise the people of Georgia that I would walk with you even as I work for you. Politicians like to pretend that they can solve all the problems. That helps you get elected. But you all know that the issues that face us are complicated. And sometimes you can't solve the problem on a dime. That's the case a lot of times. But there's value in walking with people even as you work for them. In fact, that's part of the work of figuring out what you need to do. You got to know the people. I had the great honor last year of having an audience with Pope Francis. And it's one of those moments you'll never forget that. The Pope invited me to the Vatican to spend some time with him. And by the way, I don't know if you all realize, the Pope had an incredible sense of humor. And before we left, he said, let's pray. And I thought, what an incredible thing, that the Pope is going to pray for me. He said, no, you pray first. And then he said, pray for me, don't pray against me. He had a wonderful sense of humor. But one of the things that he said, Mary Ellen, that I will never forget, and I wanted to see him because I said, I wonder, who can I talk to who knows something about what it means to be a faith leader while engaged in politics? So I went to see Pope, who I deeply admired from a distance for a long time. Excited about this new Pope also, by the way. Every Baptist preacher needs a Catholic Pope. But he said something to me that I'll never forget. He said, as you think about this question about politics and faith, he said, make sure the faith leads. You're in politics, but give priority to the values of your faith. He said that is so important. This is what I tell the priests. He said, the shepherd needs to smell like the sheep. The shepherd needs to smell like the sheep. And that is the problem in our politics, and to some degree, if we're honest, that's the problem in many of our churches. There's too big of a divide between the folks who claim to be serving and the people they're supposed to serve. And so I'm always deeply honored when I get a chance to spend time with the people that I serve. So thank you, Mercy Care, for this deep honor. You've been doing this for such a long time, since the 1880s. Ebenezer Church, by the way, was founded in 1886. So we've been here in the streets of Atlanta together, getting in good trouble. Mercy moves through me. I love that. That says it all. Too often these concepts are ethereal. But our faith tells us that the Word became flesh, it became incarnate, and dwelled among us, and we beheld His glory, the glory of the Father, full of grace and truth. Mercy is only real when people can see it and feel it moving in us and walking among those who need it the most. And you've been doing this work for such a long time. Started the Sisters Mercy mobile van that's now become 4 clinics all across Atlanta. Over 12 months, you'll provide care to tens of thousands of our neighbors in desperate need. Thank you for showing mercy for the most marginalized members of the human family. Thank you for recognizing that when the HIV/AIDS scourge began to hit us, that the question was not how did somebody get it, but how can I serve? It was the disciples who asked the wrong question when they encountered a man who had been blind from birth. They asked, well, what did he do? And Jesus ultimately said, you're asking the wrong question. The issue is, what opportunity does this present for the glory of God to be seen? What is it that you're called to do in this moment? And you get that. And so you've been working on this issue since 1989. Focusing on testing and educating people throughout the Atlanta area, preventing HIV and providing care for those who haven't. Mercy moves through me. And I've been deeply honored to work alongside you in this work. I was a pastor of a church in Baltimore, Maryland before I came to Atlanta. Born and raised here in Georgia, but my first pastorate, where I was the senior pastor after having been an assistant pastor in Harlem while in seminary and Union, I went to Baltimore, Maryland, and the zip code where my church was located had an incidence of HIV/AIDS that rivaled some sub-Saharan African nations. And so shortly after arriving in Baltimore, I sat down, stood up at a service where there were lots of clergy gathered. In fact, it was my installation service, now that I think about it. It was my investiture. And I announced that the clergy who all gathered there in all of our regalia, here's what we really ought to do. We ought to sit down when MLK Day comes back around in a few months. And all the clergy who are gathered ought to take the OraSure HIV/AIDS test. Not as a way of embarrassing anybody or showing any kind of showing off, but as a way of saying that we have to be in solidarity with others. That there's too much stigma. That the trinity of silence, shame, and stigma was as deadly as a disease at that time. And so I began to push for clergy to embody, to live what we preach, to embody it by example. And I did the same thing when I came to Ebenezer Church. You all right, remember on a Sunday morning at the end of the sermon, I sat down, took an HIV/AIDS test, and I told that the folks who were in the church, particularly the leaders, the people that other people looked up to, that you ought to sit down, that we ought to cover everybody in a magnificent blanket of care and mercy. Educating. You've been doing this work. And so I'm grateful to walk alongside of you. In closing, and nobody believes a Baptist preacher when he says in closing. I'm a senator, yes. Pastor of the famed Ebenezer Baptist Church. I'm a dad. Chloe and Caleb, that's my favorite title. I'll tell you what I really am. I'm a Matthew 25 Christian. Where Jesus said, I was hungry, and you fed me. I was sick, and I was in prison, and you came and visited me. I was a stranger. I was an immigrant. And you invited me in. And they asked the master, when were you hungry? When were you sick? When were you an inmate in America's prison industrial complex? He said, inasmuch as you've done it unto the least of these, my children, you've done it also unto me. That is the acid test of faith. That is what our faith is all about. It is the depth of our commitment to the most marginalized members of the human family, and it is my honor to bring that sensibility to my work, representing the 11 million people of Georgia in the United States Senate every single day. I am humbled beyond words that I get to stand in the halls of power and try to speak on behalf of the powerless. I'm in politics, but can I tell y'all a secret? I'm not in love with politics. I'm in love with change. I tolerate politics because amidst the nonsense, every now and then you get to do something incredible. Something that if I weren't in this position, I wouldn't be able to do it. Like write a bill to cap the cost of insulin to no more than $35 per month for our seniors. Because insulin shouldn't be expensive. It was invented 100 years ago. The patent was sold for $1. Insulin shouldn't be expensive. A lot of these drugs shouldn't be expensive. Now in the world you have a law that says that Medicare cannot negotiate the price of prescription drugs. Where are all the capitalists in the room? Where are all the free market people? I want to know where those people are when a law was written and passed that said that the consumer, who just happens to be Medicare representing the rest of us, you don't get to negotiate? Really? The person who wants to sell me something gets to show up and they tell me the price. And that's it. That is a reflection of the ways in which power has an outsized voice in our politics. And I participate in politics for all of its peril, because for me that is a moral and spiritual problem. And I want the country to be healed. I want those who are sick to be healed, but I want our country to be healed. We need to be healed. We need to be healed. All of this increasing political violence is a crude and crass, there are others, but indicator of a country in need of healing. So keep bearing witness to God's love and God's justice in the world. And every now and then I'll bump into you while we continue to get in good trouble and engage in holy mischief and compassionate conspiracy to the glory of God. Ladies and gentlemen, witness the bald and the beautiful.
Yes.
And to close us out, I'd like to invite Kirk McGee, President of the Mercy Care Board, forward.
I will not tarry long and get you back to your day. I have a couple of housekeeping issues and this is a small closing. The first thing that we're going to do is we're going to pass the plate. First housekeeping matter. On your program, you picked it up. If you have one that has a sticker or a tag on the back of it, you are welcome to take a beautiful centerpiece on your table home with you. Check that out.
Check this out.
So you can go there and have it out. So let's get you out of here. Just a few closing words. Thank you for coming and attending this award ceremony with us. It is an honor and a pleasure for Mercy Care to be able to honor the Senator, Pastor Reverend, because he set such an example for all of us. And what we take from that is that it is not just an organization, it's what you do as an individual. How you take your personal franchise and what you do with it that matters. So we take this luncheon to ask that you also join with us as we continue our mission to us by the Sisters of Mercy, to make whole individuals in this community, make the community whole, and thus make the world whole. So, as we part and we think about your role in this, and what we talk about in mercy, we talk about mercy first. So whether we are thinking about homelessness, hunger, or hatred, whether we are talking about broken windows, broken hearts, or broken people, whether we are talking about the need to approach things with charity, solidarity, or even audacity, we ask that you ask yourself each opportunity, how can mercy move through me? Thank you.